Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Side Hustle Ideas. I am Bill, the company's expert, and good morning to everybody. If it's morning where you are, this is the show where we talk about entrepreneurship, starting a business, and of course, that beautiful way into that world, which is the wonderful world of side hustles. And the title of today's episode is something to do with Let's Discuss Your Business. I don't have the title in front of me, but as I recall, that's what we're talking about today. So, thank you. I'm just going to adjust my camera here. There you go. I wouldn't want you guys not to see my beautiful hair. I spent a lot of time on it for you, for your benefit. So, welcome to everybody who's here. There's at least two people here. So, this is a Q&A type stream, podcast, whatever you call it. And that means that if you are someone who is interested in starting a business or starting a side hustle on the side to make some extra money and possibly step into a new world where you don't have to work as an employee, certainly for all your income, you can create the income directly yourself. And if you're really good at it, it can break through any kind of ceiling to your pay or your compensation in the future that may not have been possible working as an employee. So if that's something you're interested in, that's the world you kind of want to learn more about, you've come to the right place. So if you are struggling with anything, if you're wondering anything, get in the chat. You should see the chat box. Let me know what you are wanting to know, and we will figure it out. I have had many years starting businesses, running businesses of various sizes, working in multinational corporations also, and mentoring startup founders that are just trying to start out. So I've been in this world for quite a while, and it's absolutely fascinating. I'm going to start off by, until we get questions rolling in. Oh, and I just want to say one thing. If you send in a comment, if you put a comment in the chat, and for some reason it's not showing up or there's issues, I know YouTube puts a lot of filters on there, so I'm not sure how it all works, but if you're having issues with that, you can always email me. If you go to my channel page, my YouTube channel, and you click the About tab, that can show you an email address, a contact address I have. So if you tried getting in the chat and it's not working, you can always send me a note via email. I make no guarantees that I will put it on this stream, but I should be able to get it at least, and then we can talk about it. Depending when I receive it, I could do it this show or I could save it for next show. And also, before we get started, I want to say that I had tried to do a live stream on my second channel, but just some of the technicalities I was dealing with, Streamlabs OBS, that didn't really work out. So this is the first live stream I've done in a couple of weeks. So like a month or something, actually. I had to almost figure out how to use this equipment. Cool. So let me know. What I wanted to start talking about today is something that is interesting. I keep hearing this. The traditional model of entrepreneurship is that you've got to spend money up front to start a business, right? We've all heard this. And this is how it's been taught for a very long time in business schools and any place where they teach entrepreneurship. The idea is you invest money in something, and then that comes first, and then you get the business operation up and running, and it becomes a going concern, and then you start hopefully making a profit of some kind, and then you start paying back your initial capital investment. Now, that's the way it's traditionally been. But something I've been talking about for several years that still is kind of new for a lot of people is that with the internet, with things like YouTube, with all kinds of social media, there's a new model. And a lot of people don't believe me on this, but I'm now starting to hear people talk about it openly, which is really nice. That's not necessarily how it works. You don't have to spend the money up front to create an operation and create a product or service. Instead, you could use, think of the YouTube model. You create an audience first. Okay, it's called content marketing. We've known this for a while. You create an audience first. And then when you have an audience, people that know who you are, people that know what you're doing, people that are excited, okay, then you go further and you create something that you then sell to them. Either it's a product or a service or a combination thereof, right? So you don't have to have what they call an initial capital outlay. You don't have to spend a ton of money at the beginning. What you need to do is you need to spend your time and effort in building that audience, okay? Now, the YouTube thing, that's one way of doing it. But what's probably more accessible to a lot of people, certainly more immediately, is if you start to have a presence on social media. I've heard this referred to by many names. Some people call it branding. Some people call it marketing. Some people call it sales. Some people call it other things. But that's the new model. You don't have to spend a ton of cash up front. That means everybody can do this if they wanted to. You just need to know what to do, and you need to put a little effort behind it. And you can start to build a following, build a presence. And then when you have a willing audience, you can start giving them what they want or need, and you sell it to them for money. Konstantin, if I'm saying that right, Konstantin Ilushin says, "Hi, thank you for your support videos. How to do an interview. You're welcome. You're welcome. My YouTube channel is about careers, basically. And a huge part of that, of course, is like job interviews and getting hired and stuff like that. But this is also a part of it. I do 2 live streams on a regular basis. I'm doing 2 of them today. This is the first one called Side Hustle Ideas, where it's more about sort of taking your career to the next level. Okay, it's for people who don't want to necessarily work as an employee their entire lives and instead want to go more of an entrepreneurial type route. You want to start up your own money-making business operation, okay? Something that you can work from home, something that just requires possibly even, your phone or your computer, and that's it. But you bring in cash, you replace your income, or you supplement your income, right? This is a valid career option. And a lot of people start out not realizing that, but a few people get it, and there's never been a better time to do that than right now with the technology that we have that allows people to reach many, many people through the internet, through social media. This is an incredible tool. It's an absolute gift. Okay, if you have something to offer, something to say, you don't need to go through some kind of intermediary, some kind of gatekeeper. Traditionally, you would have to go on your knees, cap in hand, to some kind of large company that would stand between you and your potential audience, right? Whether it's a customer base or a fan base or an awareness base, whatever, right? You'd have to sort of go through them, right? You want to write a book, you have to go through a book publisher. If you want to make music, you have to go through a record company, right? Or, radio stations. You can't get your music out there by yourself. If you wanted to say something, you had to go on TV, on news shows and things like this, and you'd have to go to the TV stations and there's always somebody standing between you and your audience. Now, largely, that's gone. You can reach millions of people just by yourself. You don't really need to go through anyone. That you have to beg for them to take a chance on you. Those days are over. And as you reach more people, if you have something that you could say to them and they respond favorably, they say, yes, I'm interested. There's a lot of potential there. If you can help them, if you can give them something of value, then you can make money. That's how this works. That's how businesses work. So you can do it. So if you have the desire to do that, like what a lot of people can do is they can turn their hobbies into a money-making venture. Now, this is not for everyone. You have to want to do it, okay? Once you do this, you're getting into the world of business, okay? The moment you start making money, it's no longer a hobby, it's business, okay? So you have to deal with business concerns and things, but it's really not that big of a deal. Mike is here. Mike says, if your side hustle includes a brick and mortar building, Research the location. I've seen a location that constantly fails as a restaurant. My 2 cents. Yeah. Well, restaurants are notoriously risky, right? That's kind of a cliche in the world of entrepreneurship. Starting a restaurant, like a large proportion of them fail shortly after they're founded or they launch, right? So, I mean, there's many other businesses. And the thing about brick and mortar businesses is that's where you still need like a lot of cash, a lot of capital investment upfront, usually. Okay, yes, you can lease, you can rent, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, it's still expensive. It's an order of magnitude more expensive. Now, as an example, let me give you an example of the opposite. I'm not necessarily recommending this, but this as an example. Let's say you want to start up a recruiting company. I mean, God knows I talk enough about recruiters on this channel. But if you wanted to, let's say you got a certificate in HR and you know how to do recruiting and you like doing recruiting, what do you need to start up a recruiting business? You need a desk, a phone, and a computer. And you also technically need a place to interview people. But I mean, if necessary, you can go down to the local coffee shop or something and do that, at least in the beginning. Or you can get conference rooms. You can rent conference rooms in your town for extremely cheap. You can go to places like chambers of commerce and things where they provide this stuff, or government programs where they provide this to the public to stimulate economic development. So, I mean, they provide stuff like that if you know where to look. So, but I mean, whatever. Just think of coffee shop for now. You go down to the coffee shop. Now, HR companies, imagine you're doing like an executive HR company. You're actually recruiting higher level people, okay? You can make a lot of money doing that. It's almost like being in real estate. If you're in certain parts of real estate, you can make a lot of money. Think of like HR. You can make a lot of money doing that. And what do you need? A desk, a computer, and a phone, right? So how much does that cost to start up? Well, if you've got a desk and a computer and a phone, it costs $0. You can start, right? So, I mean, that's even without building an audience and stuff first, right? In contrast to a brick and mortar type business where you've got, a restaurant, you've got a physical, real property or installation of some kind, whether you're, leasing or renting or, I suppose it's possible to buy it outright. I don't know if anyone does that, but expensive. Like you need like lots and lots of money to start that up. Right. So therefore, it's a lot riskier because if you start it up and it doesn't take off immediately, you got a whole bunch of bills to pay. You got to pay back your investment. Very risky. So it's a matter of thinking up something that works for you. And you're going to come up with a custom solution that tries to tick all the boxes, all the things that you're looking for. Constantin says, I tried to start a business, subscription cleaning service. We invested in a CRM system, which was a mistake. Closed with a loss of $30,000, but it was a good experience. Yes, okay, obviously that's not ideal, but listen, if it's a learning experience and a stepping stone, it may be a really good thing. If it's like a failure that sickens you from doing that type of thing ever again, then its value as like a sort of learning experience is limited, right? But if it's like, something where you dust yourself off and you get back up on the horse and you try again, this time, having learned from the mistakes that occurred with the cleaning service, then you could argue it's a good thing. You learn some stuff. It's not as bad as it might seem. And you know what? I got news for everybody here. You learn stuff a lot of times by failing. God knows I failed. I failed a lot before I succeeded. And I think that's typical. Most people do that. And the people that never learn anything the hard way, like it's good to try and learn a lot as much as you can the easy way, like without completely failing in order to learn the lesson. But people who have never learned anything the hard way, I'm kind of suspicious of. I don't know if they really know what they're doing. Just my opinion, but you see people like that they seem to have a lot of overconfidence when they should be a bit skeptical of things and they should really be mindful of the risk they're running, they tend to just plow ahead. And that really strikes me as, you're like an amateur, you don't really know what you're doing. You think you do, but you don't. And that can be very dangerous. I'm sure, Konstantin, you learned a ton from that experience. Now, cleaning service. I'm just going to say, cleaning service right off the hop. I'm not in the cleaning business, okay? So I don't know the ins and outs to a fine detail, but cleaning, do you make a ton of money doing that? Probably not, like relatively speaking. It might not be, it might be less, there might be a lot less revenue than, say, something like selling cars, right? It's a service. It tends to be a relatively unskilled or less skilled service. Okay, so that would be my first kind of concern. You're not going to get a ton of money or charge a lot from doing that. So my suspicion is that business is going to be all about managing costs, which means that your margins are going to be tight. So for that reason, that would not be my first choice for selecting a business. Some people can do it. And if you're in that world and you know what you're doing, all the more power to you. You can really make it work. But just looking at businesses side by side, that would not be my first choice for that reason. Because you can't, or at least I'm not aware of, if you did like a premium service where you have a higher markup, right? That's what you want. You want to provide something that's very valuable to people. It's very important to them. And cleaning may not fit into that category. It might be a necessary evil. They do it for as cheaply as possible. They don't really think about it. But it would have to be something like, okay, no, this is important and we want to pay, we don't mind paying for something really good because it's very important that it's done right. That's the type of business that I would look for. A lot of more highly skilled services fit into that category. You can always go cheaper. You can go cheaper and get something crappier. But we've learned that that's the wrong way to go. We're happy to pay for something that's good, right? For many years, that's the kind of the types of businesses I've been in, because you can have profit margins of like 35%. You can mark things up and people will pay it because they feel that it's well worth it. Konstantin says you need to clearly define what to invest in. Yes, of course. You need to know what you're doing before you put your money into something, yes. But the goal, in my opinion, especially these days, is that you really don't need to invest a lot before you start. You can start up something just with yourself, and you can start up something, without a lot of real assets necessary. Or like, for example, let's say you wanted to start a cleaning business. Okay, the way I would recommend going about it, would be a good way to go about it is scale it down and then scale it down again. And that's what you start with. Okay, so for example, do you need a brick and mortar building? Probably not. There might be some version of it where you work from home and you go out and you provide a service. You go on location, you go on site to provide your service, and then you're done. You don't need a physical head office or anything like that. So you can eliminate that in the beginning until you build up a client base. You're profitable, right? You have revenue coming in and you're profitable. Then you scale up. Then if it's necessary to get a head office and hire a whole bunch more employees, then you take that step then, right? So you scale it up. So whenever somebody suggests something to me, I try and think like, okay, how can we scale that down to like a kernel of, the sort of core business that can be done as cheaply as possible without any startup capital whatsoever? Is it possible to create that version of it? Start with that. Start building your audience. Start learning the business. And then if that works, then you scale up. You take the next step. Okay, you reinvest some of your money back in and scale up. And then you do that. And then if that works, after learning more, building more of your customer base, building more of your audience, learning the business environment more, Then if that works, you've got your revenue positive and you're profitable, then consider taking the next step and scale up to maybe, having a full brick and mortar location. You've got a whole bunch of employees, you've got a whole bunch of assets like vehicles and whatever, tooling, and go from there. That's not traditionally the way you do it. Traditionally, the way you do it is you just come in with a bunch of money, you raise capital, you spend it all on a wild guess on what you're going to need. You make projections that really aren't based on anything real. They could be wildly inaccurate. And you take a huge risk. And you risk failing miserably. You risk losing everything. Now, if this is venture capital, sure, yeah, you can do that. Okay? That's just the nature of the business. But if this is an individual trying to start some entrepreneurial thing, that's maybe a new career path for them, that's probably not the way to go. Konstantin says, do you think business leverage differs in relation to the culture or country where it is applied? Now, when you say business leverage, what are you talking about? Are you talking about financing? Is that a way of you saying financing? If you could explain what you're asking for exactly, because leverage means something like there's operational leverage, financial leverage, marketing leverage. There's all kinds of leverages. That's a way of amplifying the effect of something. Okay. So business leverage, that could refer to any of those. Let me know. Aunt Johnson, I remember Aunt Johnson. Hello again. Aunt Johnson says, I'm seriously considering consulting with my coding knowledge and skill sets. How might one go about getting clients? Okay, well, here's what you do. Set up a ton of informational interviews. You can either go to a lot of networking events where you're rubbing shoulders with your potential clients, okay? So, I'm not in the coding world, not anymore. So I don't know what events those would be these days. If you're going to some kind of trade show or convention or anything, or you're going to industry association events, whatever. Great, you can maybe do it there. But what I think is probably the more universal way for everybody would be do a bunch of informational interviews. Go and figure out who your intended clients are. Okay, hopefully you've got that kind of figured out already. Who are your potential clients? And start getting informational interviews with them. Okay. And you sit down with them. You could sit down with them from, half an hour to an hour and a half. I'd recommend an hour and a half, if it's working really well, and pick their brain. Ask them get an idea for how they think, what they're looking for, what's, when they are looking for the service that you're going to provide, consulting about coding or something, what's their biggest need and what's the hurdles that you're going to have to overcome for them to pull the trigger on hiring you. Okay, that's what you're wanting to find out. So get into these people's heads, find out how they think, ask them a ton of questions, do informational interviews. Now, if you do 20 informational interviews with people that you consider to be your potential clients, so these would be people that are, middle managers, I assume, or executive managers in certain companies. If you do, say, 20 of those over a period of a couple of months, you'll have a much better idea of what's necessary. Okay? Not to mention that has a direct, doing informational interviews also has an indirect or a direct benefit in that, you now know that person. You could pick up the phone and call them. And, if you contact them later and say, I've now founded my own consulting business that I consult on this. I help companies with this, and I can help you with that problem you're telling me about. So just so you know, I will send you, I don't know, a pamphlet or something, or I'll give you a link or whatever. Right. So it has a direct benefit too. But the biggest thing you're going to get is you're going to understand how your potential customers and clients think. Okay. And that will give you all the detailed information you need about that particular business in your location right now. okay, and how people are thinking and what are the challenges and what are they looking for, okay? That's how you do it. You got to build that up. You can't start with the operational knowledge and then try and tack on the marketing. You got to do it the other way around. I'm a technical person. For many years, when I was young, I thought like you start with the technical knowledge and then surely somebody wants this. So you offer it for sale and then are surprised when nobody shows up. That's actually the wrong approach. You start by talking to your potential customers, figure out what their needs are, figure out what you need to do in order to sell it to them, right? And then go that way and adapt what you offer to that. So I would start it. Now, if you're wondering how the hell do I get informational interviews, how do I go to networking events? The informational interview part, I break that down in a very detailed way in my Get Hired course. I have some YouTube videos on my channel that cover parts of the process, but the whole thing is broken down definitively in that course. So if you're interested, that's where I have like the definitive step-by-step kind of thing with templates. Constantin, leverage, I mean economic instruments, how a successful business is regulated. Sorry for the imprecise. Well, once again, economic instruments. I mean, these are, it feels like euphemisms. Like, what do you mean? Are you talking about investment? Are you talking about capital, like money, putting money into something? Because leverage, when it comes to economic instruments, which I assume I mean is financial, that's where you take out a loan to finance something, right? So somebody that doesn't have any money to spare can get a loan and invest in something, and then if that, let's say that thing, whether it's a stock like shares, or it's a company, or it's any like real estate, any other kind of investment, let's say its value increases. Maybe you took out a loan, you took the money and you bought shares in, I don't know, IBM with it, right? And then IBM shares go up and they make a profit. Well, you went from having nothing to getting most of the profit from your IBM shares in a short amount of time. That's financial leverage. If you had invested your own money, it would have been harder for you. So financial leverage is where you borrow money and then invest it. So, okay, so how a successful business is regulated? Well, the details of that are going to depend in what country you are and in what industry you are. I can't give you a detailed answer on that. I mean, I'm in Canada, but if you're in most Western countries and the US, like, being the sort of big one, I mean, how are they regulated? Like you're talking, I mean, there's taxes you got to pay. In certain industries, they have industry-specific regulations. Think of medicine. That's regulated very, very intensely. It's scrutinized by all kinds of rules and things. You can't hire people to perform operations that aren't doctors for a start, right? So, I mean, you're going to have to be a bit more precise. What do you mean by regulated, and what industry are you in? Sorry. I can give you general answers to general questions, but their general answers are usually unhelpful, right? It's probably stuff you already know. So sorry to prompt you again, but you're going to have to be more specific. What precisely do you mean? If you make money, like just in general, if you make money, okay, let's say, I don't know, you sell ornaments out of say you have a garage, you sell ornaments out of your garage. You do arts and crafts, you buy materials, styrofoam, papier-mâché, paint, cotton balls, and then you create this amazing work of art, these little ornaments, and then you sell them for $100 each. I don't know. After you pay your for the material, right? Your expenses, your costs, and you pay your utility bills for the energy and keeping the lights on and stuff, you get to keep the money. Now, at once a year, they will tax you, right? It varies depending on what country you're in, but you get to keep most of the money. Where I am, the corporate tax rate is around 30%. So, but there's ways, I mean, it's weird because if anyone knows anything about accounting, you will know that there's loopholes around everything, right? And what a lot of businesses do is they find a way of saying, look, I made this much money, but after I deducted all my expenses, I was left with zero. So I didn't make any money. Now, really, your expenses are your fees, other things, right? That really amounts to you putting the money in your pocket, right? So that's a thing, right? You can say, oh, that's a business expense, and that's a business expense, and that's a business expense, right? Now, an auditor that shows up, a lot of times, especially for really small business, it's very hard to say, like, is that an expense, or is that, not an expense and it's really profit? I mean, it's very hard to say these things. Often they don't have the time to do that. Larger companies, they're scrutinized a lot more, and you get like a lot of actual accounting rules that come into play. But on the small scale, usually you'd farm that out. You would get yourself an accountant. They do your taxes and they explain the stuff to you. And but you don't have to worry about that until you're making money. So it's a good problem to have. You shouldn't worry about it in the beginning. You only need to worry about that if you're making money. Okay, so that's the good thing. So don't get freaked out about that side of it. You don't have to worry about it. If you have money coming in, you can easily pay, an accountant to help you a couple hours out of the year, whatever you need, and they worry about all the taxes. Then they answer any questions you might have, and they handle all that stuff. So that's how that works. Sarthak, if I'm saying that right, says, first of all, thank you. You might remember me, huh? I started watching your channel 3 years fresh out of university as a CS, a computer science graduate, giving interviews. Fortunately, a bit financially stable now. Okay. I am currently in the process of developing a software that helps businesses in my domain operate faster. Details would be too verbose, but consider it as an efficiency tool. Okay. My question, 1, should I consider my current employment to brokerage sale for my app? 2, I am considering, is that system as a service or a software as a service approach? 3, I'm bootstrapped. I don't know what RN means. Should I seek investment? I don't need it. Okay, so your first question, I don't fully understand. Should I consider my current employment to brokerage sale for my app? I don't know what you mean by that. I assume from that you've created an app, and it's a business efficiency tool. Okay, your clients, it's like a B2B type thing. Your clients are businesses. Are you wondering if you should sell it to somebody else? Well, I can't answer that for you. I mean, it is an option, and it works under certain circumstances. Okay, it depends what you're trying to do, what stage you're at, and what would be needed for the next step. It also depends on like what your competition is, and the mindset of your customers and all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of factors there. Like, as a very general rule, if you're thinking of selling, it depends on what the forecast is. If you forecast good things, okay, there's not going to be an economic downturn. There's not any competitor that's worrying you. They're going to blow you out of the water. Like if things look kind of rosy, all things being equal, I wouldn't sell. I mean, you might be able to bring in some other investors, like having minority, shareholders and things, like other directors, possibly. Especially if they've got a lot of expertise or they've got a lot of relationships they can bring. I mean, there's that element. But I mean, it's hard for me to give you an answer on that. I'm considering software as a service approach. I'm bootstrapped. Software as a service. Well, once again, the answer to that will be in informational interviews with your clients. You've got to understand what your clients want. If you offer this and your clients are receptive to it, they understand it, they're not suspicious of it, and they're used to doing it, sure. If, on the other hand, you offer it, but your clients firmly believe that your service or your product should not be a subscription service. It should be a one-time only, possibly with charges for upgrades, like whatever they believe it should be. You're going to encounter resistance if you go against that, right? So it's critical that you really understand how your clients think. What's their opinion on if you did this or if you did that? What would they think of it? It's very important you get that information. That's the only way to really mitigate the risk of, just taking a blind shot in the dark. If you don't need investment, in my opinion, all things being equal, don't seek it. There are exceptions to that, of course. If somebody is willing to come in and they've got a lot of expertise, a lot of relationships, then you're not taking it for the money. You're taking it to tap that talent and it's an opportunity. That person can open doors for you. That's why you would possibly take it. But all things being equal, the more investment, the more interested parties you have, the more bad things. Like it would be easier for you to just run the whole thing. If you can get away with that, great. You can do what you want, when you want, and then you keep all the profit, right? You don't have to share it with anyone if you don't want to. So that's the ideal situation. However, there comes a time and place where it makes sense for you to partner with people if they can really bring something valuable. Okay? So that's kind of how you got to think of it. Also, when you start down that road, you're now, it pulls a lot of your time away from running the business, and it pulls it into like arrangements with your partners, meetings with your partners, all this kind of stuff. And it complicates things. RN is right now. Okay, don't use acronyms when you're like writing to me. I know that's like an internet thing, but every industry and every country has got its own acronyms. It's hard for me to really know it when I'm talking to just everybody, like all around the world. A SaaS tool, I'm in the same realm. Okay. Konstantin, thank you for your answer. Should I include the time to create this armament product in the final cost of the product? How to calculate it? Well, look, it depends on what you're doing. If you've got employees creating it for you, obviously you've got to factor that in. But if it's just you can't, like, listen, it's not like if you're self-employed and you're creating something yourself, you're creating a product and you're going to sell it, it's not like you're punching a clock. You're not an employee. You're a founder. You're an owner. And you don't charge people for your time, really. Like, you don't charge by the hour for your time creating a product. Okay? You could do it that way or you could not do it that way. The only thing is, how much money do you need to live to keep this thing going, right? And possibly make a product. There's many different ways of pricing something. There's a cost plus structure, which is what you're kind of getting at here, which is you figure out what your costs are, and then you add a markup, like a premium on top of that. So you add 10% or something. It cost me $1,000 to develop this or to create it. I'm going to charge 1,010 or 1,100. Okay. So you make a product. That's called a cost plus pricing scheme. You can have a value-based pricing scheme where, like, think of jewelry, right? Some of these jewelry companies, they create a piece of jewelry, they create it in China, it costs them $5 to create, they sell it for $300, right? In America. So it's like, it's not about what it costs. Okay. That doesn't enter into it. It could cost 1 cent. It doesn't matter. What matters is what people will pay for it. If they really, really want that thing, okay, that piece of jewelry, they really want it, and they'll pay $300 for it because they feel it looks better than your average $300 piece of jewelry, okay? Then you sell it for $300 if that's what, the market will support. right? And you figure the stuff out ahead of time. You can do it with projections. You can say like, okay, if I charged $200, I expect to sell this many units, in which case these would be my costs and then this would be my profit. If I sold it for $500, I project this is how many units I would sell. So this, in that case, this would be my revenue, these would be my costs, and this would be my profit. And you do the one that maximizes your profit, right? Now, all those projections are based on guesses, right? But maybe you've had some experience, or you could probe the market. First sell it for 500, wait like 6 months, then bring it down to 400, then bring it down to 300. I don't know. Right? But there's different pricing schemes. There's other things besides what you're doing, which is cost plus. Okay, so you got to be aware of that. Sarthak says, let me explain. My application helps businesses and my company deals with B2B. It runs on server. I directly cannot contact businesses in my domain, so I'm thinking of approaching symbiotic approach where I ask my employment to offer my solution to their clients. Incorrect, Sarthak. You can contact your clients directly, your business clients. You just need to learn how to do that. Okay? There is a way to approach these organizations where you go to the right person within the organization, you approach them over the right channel, and you say the right thing, okay? You present yourself in a certain way. It is possible. Don't tell me you can't contact your clients. If you can't contact your clients, you're screwed, okay? Because how are you supposed to understand their needs if you can't contact them? You've got to be able to contact them, okay? Okay, so that's a skill that you might want to try learning, okay? Imagine if you could talk to anybody, and you could ask them anything. How useful would that be to you? Probably pretty damn useful. You could say, look, who are you spending your money on right now? Who, you're buying this thing from who right now? And they tell you, oh, from these people. It's like, why do you choose these people? Oh, I chose them because of this. Well, what do you look for? Is there anything that would get you to go away from them, to leave them and consider somebody else, another supplier? You say, sure, I'm not happy with this thing they do. I'm not happy with their prices. I'm not happy with this. I'm not happy with that, right? Imagine if you could get that information. You know how useful that would be. You could come right in. You could say, well, hello, Mr. or Ms. whoever, who can offer this contract to anyone. Well, I offer you this. I provide this. Here's the price. Here's the details, right? Just give me a chance. And chances are they're going to go with you, or they're going to bring some of their business to you just to see, can you live up to your promises, right? Imagine if you could get that information. That would be very useful, wouldn't it? Right? Well, it's possible to get that information. You just need to learn how to do it. Okay. What I suspect is you're maybe a technical type person. You learn how to code and all that kind of stuff, which is great. I started off as a technical type person. I have a degree in engineering, but you've got to now round out your skills. You've got to learn how to interact with people, get this kind of information. That's what's going to lead to success for you. Okay, where are we here? I don't know what you mean by, so I'm thinking of approaching symbiotic approach where I ask my employment to offer my solution to their clients and share profit, if any. Well, yeah, okay, I understand what you're saying. They might sell a giant software package and you sell a plugin, something like that, right? I've seen that a lot of times before. And they can bundle your plugin with their software, right? So it's possible, but once again, you got to know what people want. Some companies are like, no, I don't like independent plugins. They're very against it. If we can just provide that functionality in our app, if we can subsume that function into our product, then we don't have to share profits with anyone, right? So other people, they welcome it. It's an ecosystem. The more the merrier, as many third-party app designers as possible. little vendors that make apps. That makes us more powerful, makes our solution more powerful. So it depends how they're thinking, right? You got to learn that for a start. Don't worry about the acronyms, Sarthak. That's fine. Oscar, I've had something simple in the back burner for a while. Super simple, must be handmade. Time consuming, so must be made somewhere other than the US. Okay? I'll be able to pay people in the third world country, say India, more than a living wage. Okay? And many of the things you are talking about applies to me, even though I think this is in the way scale. Okay? So I thank you very much. Okay. You can do that. I know that for many, many years, there's been companies that do contract manufacturing, like where basically you give them a design of something and they have connections with all kinds of producers and factories and things, fabricators all over the world. They'll create your product. So that's one way. Another way is if you live in like a city, they'll have a lot of times they'll have some kind of government office that is to do with economic development. Like they want to encourage homegrown entrepreneurship and business ownership and all this kind of stuff. And, there's stuff that they can help. For example, there's an organization called, I think it's called like the World Trade Center. Isn't it the World Trade Center? Let me just do this live here. I know they have one in my World Trade Center. Okay, there's one here. There's one in New York. Yeah, there's movies and stuff, but organization. Because what they do is they facilitate association. Now let's see here. Because what they do is they facilitate connecting up with companies, in particular manufacturing companies in other countries. So if you want to partner with some kind of production facility in India or something like that, they have the connections to the specific production facilities in India. Like if that's what you're looking to do. Okay. So, I mean, maybe there's other organizations that do this, but I know that the World Trade Centers Association does that, and they're in many locations. So you could maybe start there. I don't know if they have a location in whatever city or place you're in, but that may be a starting point. Okay. What I would do personally is I would try making it yourself. This is just my blanket approach, is like, instead of setting up this big, giant, complicated thing to see if it even works, I would try, creating the product yourself. And I understand, it'll be, I don't know if you're making it yourself or you're getting someone locally, just knock off a few just to test it as a proof of concept to see if there's demand. Because you don't want to set all this up and then find that there's no demand for your product. And in order to move them, you'd have to reduce the price so low you can't make a profit, even with, subbing out your manufacturing. So, you know what I mean? Like that's how I would do it. The goal is in the beginning is not to see if you can make a profit, just to see if you can move if there's demand for this. Then you'll have a better idea of what your costs need to be. And then you have more of a precise goal in mind when you look to outsource some of the manufacturing. But that's just me. That's just my gut reaction to this. Start it first and then scale it up to having, other operations. Sarthak says, thank you, sir. I'll take your advice into consideration and we'll create a plan to approach clients' businesses appropriately and accurately. Yeah, learn how to network. Learn how to get information interviews with executives and, do good informational interviews. Have these people like you, have these people get to know you, and just remember, the whole purpose is to pick their brain, to get them to give you information about what they think, how they think, what they look for, what they care about, what they don't like, where they think things are going, all that stuff. right? Because that's going to inform what you should do to sell to them, right? Once again, I give the details of how to do that, or at least one method. I used this method to build my own consulting business. I put it into that course. It's a great way for people to get a job, actually. That's the way to tap the hidden job market. I talk about that on my other live stream. And my other live stream actually begins in 10 minutes, so I have to wrap this up soon. Ant Johnson says, I would put my SaaS, my software as a service product, in an LLC or an S Corp and patented, then you are guaranteed profit. Well, you're not guaranteed profits. And that stuff doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. You're putting the cart before the horse when you're worrying about all the legal stuff like that. What matters most is, do you understand your clients? Do you understand your potential customers? That's the only thing that matters. And if you're an operations type person, you can probably deliver on whatever their wants and needs are. The big challenge will be finding out what their wants and needs really are. And it's not as simple as just asking, like, or doing surveys. Okay. You got to really find out how these people think and what their attitudes are to different things. Dude, this is exactly what I've needed. Okay. Good. Yeah. Start small. Start, like, if you can just create. Now, Oscar, you were the one that was trying to do the India thing. Just start by creating the product and see if you can sell it. See if you can sell like 10 units. That's the beginning. If you offer it and all of a sudden they're snapped up, you're onto something. If you create this thing or you offer it for sale and you can't get anyone to buy a single unit, you don't know how to reach the people that might be interested in buying this thing, or you don't know how to convince them that this is something they should get, then you've got to work on that problem first if you want this to work. Okay? That's what's most important. Okay? Once there's a demand, then you can worry about the operations side, like trying to meet the demand and get your costs down and all that kind of stuff. Do it efficiently, right? Don't start with the whole like operations and efficiency stuff. Start with the marketing sales stuff. Who wants this? How much will they pay? How can I convince them to buy it? And how can I get enough demand and make enough revenue to justify doing this and make a profit? Okay. Anyway, there are 16 people, or now 21 people. Thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. I have to wind this down now. I'm going to be back on the air in like 8 minutes with my other live streams. What should I call this? Is this called a live stream or a podcast? Because it's technically a live stream, but everybody keeps using the word podcast for like a live video show. So should I start calling it a podcast? Let me know in the comments what you think. Is this a podcast or is this a live stream? I always thought podcasts were like audio only. You'd have a placeholder picture if there's any video, but it's basically audio. You're listening to like a radio show, I thought live streams were the live video feed, right? But everybody keeps referring to this as a podcast. So let me know what I should do in the comments. I am going to sign off in a minute. Thank you for being here. Remember, I just want everyone to know, okay, if you're young, you're in your 20s, maybe even in your 30s, there is more to making money than working as an employee. Okay, you can create your own job and you can burst through whatever ceiling you might be under in the world of being an employee. Okay, if you know what you're doing. Now, the caveat is that you got to learn a little bit. You got to learn business. Okay. And that's kind of a little bit of a hurdle for people in the sense that, it takes a little bit of time, but it's really not big of a deal. If you've been to school, you've been to trade school, you've been to university, especially if you've taken things like in this chat today, people were they're coders, they're developers. Learning business is kind of child's play if you know things like science and engineering. It's really an order of magnitude less complicated. Okay. So it's really not that hard. There's many ways you can do this. The last thing I'm going to say today is I also have this, my $100 MBA course, where it's a self-study course. And what I do is I present to you all the information that you would learn in an MBA, a Master's of Business Administration. It's the gold standard for knowing business, how to run a business, the cost side and the profit side. And what I do is I don't teach it to you all myself. It's not all from me. What I do is I provide you with a reading list, and you get these textbooks. You can order them off Amazon, and they are the textbooks that are used in places like Harvard, okay, in their business programs, their MBA programs. So if you take a course from Harvard in their MBA program, you're going to be using this textbook, right? Now, obviously, they're also talking about it in class and, all this. But I mean, this is like my course is like, what, 1% of the cost of an Harvard MBA? Anyway, so you learn it on your own. It's entirely self-study. And if you want to learn business, to learn the skills to be able to do this, like really definitively and understand it through and through, I've tried to present that all in that course. And that course is for 4 big types of people. And one of them is entrepreneurs. So if you want to be an entrepreneur and you've never been to business school, you can learn this stuff, and that will save you from learning so many things the hard way and making huge financial mistakes. You'll be able to win instead of like betting your life savings on something and then losing it all, which I've seen, unfortunately, some startup founders do because they rushed in without knowing anything and took big risks. You can do all this stuff in this day and age without spending any real money and just putting in a little bit of effort. So if this interests you, check out that course, and I'll be resuming doing this live stream every week. That's what it looks like now. I tried to do it on my other channel, ran into technical problems, but I will be back next week. So thank you all, and you guys are awesome. I'll see you soon. Take care.